Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and my thanks to you for inviting me to speak in this series of lectures on the governance of the United Kingdom. My name, as has been explained, is David Rowlands, and I have been a member of the UK Independence Party for some 15 years. I'm currently chair of the UKIP Wales Regional Committee, and I'm the PPC for the Merthyr and Rhymney constituency. This year, indeed these past few years, have been momentous for the UK Independence Party. In May, we won our first national election, something that had not been achieved by any insurgent party in over 100 years. In fact, the last time the establishment was rocked so dramatically was when the Labour Party, that is, the real Labour Party, first appeared on the political scene. It is therefore fitting that Merthyr Tydfil, the first constituency in the UK to elect a Labour Party candidate to Westminster, is also UKIP's #1 target seat in Wales in this coming election. The country, ladies and gentlemen, is experiencing a major political upheaval, and it is UKIP that is driving that change across the whole of England and Wales. We are now recognised as a major political party. Whatever the outcome of May's general election, there can be no doubt that British politics will be changed forever. It looks increasingly like the SNP will all but wipe out Labour, the Tories and the Lib Dems in Scotland. In England and Wales, it looks like UKIP will threaten both Conservative and Labour seats and will change the outcome in many constituencies. So how will this huge surge in support for UKIP translate itself in Wales? Well, frankly, the first-past-the-post system is likely to make it difficult for us to turn the unprecedented support we received in the European elections into parliamentary seats, even though that support seems not to have abated at all. We do not, however, completely discount our winning a number of seats. We are, however, confident that by voting UKIP, the people of Wales will be sending a signal to the other major parties and will be paving the way for a UKIP assault in the Assembly elections next year. And it is the Assembly, devolution, and the Constitution to which I will now turn my attention. In political terms, the United Kingdom has always been a remarkably stable country. It has remained a beacon of hope for many European people who have often had to endure political turmoil in their own countries. And it is my belief it is the flexible nature of our Constitution and its uniqueness, so often derided by the liberal elite, that has helped us maintain that stability. We in UKIP believe that we should be proud of our Constitution and proud of the history that spawned it. We do not subscribe to the view that we need to be told how to govern our own country by those living elsewhere. And we do not believe that former communist countries in Eastern Europe and those countries which have succumbed to dictatorships in our lifetime are all republics such as France, which regularly experience violent protests and turmoil, have anything to teach we, the British, about democracy. Westminster is recognised around the world as the mother of parliaments. Our Anglo-Saxon legal system and the genius of common law is practiced around the world. Our stability and resilience in the face of adversity is admired by almost all other nations, or at least those, it seems, outside the European Union. Yet all these great aspects of our Constitution, legal rights, historical precedents, the freedom of the individual, have all but been extinguished by the ruling political class. Those people who have signed treaty after treaty subjugating those basic British rights to an alien concept of democracy, propped up by an equally alien system of law, that of corpus juris, those fundamental rights given to the British people under Magna Carta, including that of habeas corpus, are being swept away in favour of an inferior legal system which put the dictates of the state above the freedom of the people. Concepts such as double jeopardy, innocence until proven guilty, charges being laid within 24 hours of arrest, trial by jury, trial by your peers through lay magistrates, have either been cast aside or are being challenged in favour of the European system of law enforcement. I cannot begin to explain how angry I become, often expressed by hurling a slipper at the television, when I hear commentators say that it is Europe which has established our human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, our Bill of Rights was established nearly 400 years ago, prior to the existence of the European Union, and which is our Bill of Rights that established the fundamental principles of democracy, such as curbing the powers of the executive, a system of checks and balances, free elections, and freedom of speech in Parliament. We do not need Brussels to tell us how to look after the rights of our citizens. Can I now turn to governance at home? Devolution within the UK is a reality, foisted on the British people by a Labour government. Even a blind man on a galloping horse could have foreseen the can of worms this devolution would become. Yet it is only now, with a huge insurgence of the SNP threatening Labour's very existence in Scotland, has the Labour Party acknowledged this reality. The genie has been let out of the bottle, and we will all have to live with the consequences. And where does it leave us? Well, it leaves us with a united kingdom that will, unless we are very careful, become a disunited kingdom. What will that mean for the people of Wales? Well, given the record of the Welsh Government to date, I contend a very bleak future. The never-ending push for more devolved powers, coupled to a begging bowl economy, can only eventually lead to one conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, it will not be the Welsh people who make the choice for an independent Wales. It will be the English, fed up with the demands that create an inequality with spending on the Welsh, Scottish, and yes, even the Northern Irish peoples, compared to that of the English. So what makes me so pessimistic about Wales' future in this changing face of British governance? Perhaps a brief appraisal of the record of the Welsh Assembly, dominated, of course, by the Labour Party for the whole of its 15 years' existence, may explain my pessimism. Education is the bedrock on which the prosperity of any country is built. Wales at one time had one of the finest education systems in the world. But today, according to PISA rankings, we are now close to the bottom of the world tables, especially in those core subjects which equip our young people for the world of commerce, mathematics, English, and science. The youth of Wales, the future of Wales, have become tragically let down by those who govern us. It may be fashionable to talk about a health crisis in Wales, but fashionable or not, most of the criticisms have a very real base in truth. Does it engender any confidence when we hear that a recent plea from the Welsh BMA asking for an investigation into health in Wales was turned down by the First Minister, him saying, I have spoken to my friends from my university days, and they tell me that an investigation is not needed. So we now have policy by Carwyn Jones' friends. As a simple illustration of the incompetence of the Wales government in running the health service, consider these facts. Wales' top cancer hospital has a press department of 8 full-time staff at a cost of £750,000 per year, a situation which is common in our hospitals. We have a Welsh ambulance service in Merthyr, waiting lists that are some of the worst in Western Europe, let alone the UK. I challenge you to watch the BBC News, Wales News, and count how many times the Welsh NHS is featured. I can promise you, almost daily, and almost exclusively reflecting some of the sort of inefficiency or missed targets. Can we now turn to the economy? Can we take any comfort from the Assembly's economic management of Wales? Again, sadly not. Wales has qualified for the EU structural funding for the third time, lauded as a great achievement by the Welsh Labour government. For what this really meant was that even with the billions of pounds Wales had already received, and criticised by the EU itself as being wasted, it has remained one of the poorest nations in Europe. Hardly a ringing endorsement of the strategic economic policies of the Welsh Government. The plain truth is that almost all the previous European funds have been used to expand a burgeoning public sector and public body projects, with hardly any being used to boost a collapsing private economy. It seems party ideology takes precedence over economic pragmatism. Just a few examples of this principle. Monies have been afforded to various non-governmental organisations, NGOs, such as the Welsh Local Government Organisation. A non-elected body received circa £20 million over 3 years. This is on top of receiving £90,000 per year from each local authority, which again equates to £2 million per year. £1.5 million to the trade union Unison, which in turn bankrolls the Labour Party, and a further £1.8 million to the Trades Union Congress. In all, over 3 years, £1.5 billion was awarded by the Welsh Government to such dubious recipients. I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that unless there is a drastic change in the composition of the Senedd, Wales will continue to cascade down the table of economic, social and educational achievement. So, does UKIP have a viable alternative to that which is being offered us by the other major parties? The answer is a resounding yes, and it is a policy built on a belief in the British people. I will pause and have some water if I may for that. Sorry about that. Thank you. For nearly 40 years, the people have been fed on a diet of deceit, untruths, and downright lies by the political ruling classes, particularly with regard to the UK's relationship with the European Union. Let me give you some examples. This is what they say. The United Kingdom cannot exist as a sovereign state. It must be part of a European superstate. Actually, of course, it is never stated in such stark language. They simply sign away our sovereignty in a series of treaties, telling us that each one is simply a tidying up exercise with the transfer of a few, and here we have Eurospeak, a few competences. For competences, read powers. The stark reality of the consequences of these treaties is that Europe now has competences over vast swathes of our lives: agriculture, fishing law, the environment, working practices and related legislation, transport, border control, and increasingly defence, to name but a few. And it is these people who now tell you that Britain, the 6th largest economy on earth, cannot survive as a sovereign state. These same people would have been the very people to have castigated us unconditionally if we had denied any of our former colonies the right to self-determination, however tiny their economies may have been. And they prop up this ludicrous assertion of our inability to govern ourselves by a litany of dire consequences if we should dare to attempt to disassociate ourselves from a political union with a European superstate. It amounts to scaremongering at its worst, and it goes something like this. If we, the United Kingdom, come out of Europe, often ludicrously referred to as pulling up the drawbridge, one of a certain Mr. Clegg's more fanciful comments, I believe, 3 million British jobs will be put in jeopardy, insinuating that if we leave the countries of Europe will initiate tariffs on British goods. Those who promulgate this argument fail to mention that such a tariff war would cost Europe the 5 million jobs which are dependent on their trade with us. In the words of no less a personage than that arch anti-European, Neil Kinnock, just a few years ago, no jobs will be lost if we come out of a political union with Europe. As it were, straight from the horse's mouth, and a horse, I may add, that has been very well fed by the European Union. But when these facts are pointed out to the Europhiles, they have a fallback gambit. And it goes like this. If we come out of Europe, we will not be able to influence the rules and regulations on goods and services we sell to Europe. The argument, again, has no basis in truth, and this time on two fronts. The UK's second biggest export market outside Europe is the USA. We have no input into the rules and regulations of goods sold to them, nor indeed to any of the rest of the world, which makes up 50% of all our exports. It also falls short on the fact that Japan and China sell far more goods to Europe than the UK, as do many other countries, none of whom have any influence on Europe's rules and regulations. The plain truth is, the European superstate is a political ideology which has nothing to do with the betterment or the well-being of the peoples of Europe. It serves two groups of people, the political elite and big business. The political elite, because that is exactly what they are: elite, untouchable and unaccountable. Big business, because the free movement, not only of goods, but of peoples across Europe, means that big business can exploit the oversupply of labour, particularly semi or unskilled labour. Hence the rise of short-term agency work with little or no protection or rights. Lately, of course, we have seen the introduction of zero-hour contracts, a totally iniquitous form of employment, the likes of which has not been seen since the 19th century, dockers, when dockers turned up at dockyard gates to be chosen or not to be chosen for a single day's work. Well, you may now be asking, what is this to do with governance? Well, it has everything to do with governance, because these are the fatuous arguments promulgated by the present political classes to keep this great country of ours wedded to that undemocratic, corrupt, untouchable, unaccountable elite in Brussels, presided over by an unelected commission and an unelected president. Add to this their desire to keep our economy shackled to some of the weakest performing economies of the world, those of the European Union, a market that is shrinking year on year in its percentage of world trade, and you may begin to perceive that this is an ideological quest and not an economic one. I asked the question earlier, does UKIP have an alternative to offer? Well, most certainly we most certainly do, and this is it. We will withdraw from the political allegiance with the European superstate and return to a trading partnership with our friends in Europe, which is what we, who were allowed to vote, were told we were joining back in 1973. We will regain our true sovereignty, enable us to trade with the world on our terms, not European terms. We will take back control of our territorial waters, which have been shamefully plundered by Europe's fishing laws. Farming and the farming practices will be decided by a British Parliament in the interest of British farmers and British people. The writ of habeas corpus will be the supreme law in our courts. We, above all, will take back control of our borders, so that we can return to the centuries-old traditions of taking in those persecuted peoples from around the world at large, but instituting restrictions on those who wish to come here for economic reasons. As indeed does almost all the nations of earth. As a sovereign state, we will be able to stem the unsustainable tide of immigration, which at this present rate means we will have to build a city the size of Cardiff every year just to accommodate the annual increase in our population. That means not only the houses, but also the hospitals, schools, doctors' surgeries, roads, sewage, water, electricity, all that a modern metropolis demands. Britain will once again regain its status as one of the great trading nations of the world. We will reconnect with our Commonwealth, which not only shares our common language, traditions and democratic systems, but also represents a third of the world's GDP and is growing faster than any other economic bloc on earth. UKIP's vision for Britain is not a backward-looking vision. It is a positive, forward-looking vision, a vision for the 21st century. It is Europe which is wallowing in 19th century economic ideologies. The vision of UKIP is a united kingdom with one supreme legislature, and that's in Westminster. I put it to you that only a fool would exchange Wales' 40 MPs in a democratic British Parliament of 650 members for 4 MEPs in an undemocratic European Parliament of 751 members. Only a fool would favour Wales as an insignificant region in a vast European empire stretching from the Baltic to the Aegean, to that of a nation in the union of nations we call the United Kingdom. We are confident that it's UKIP's policy for governance which will resonate with the British people. Indeed, it already is. We only have to give them the truth. We will leave it to the others to perpetrate the lies. Thank you very much.